every minute counts. Putin has set the nuclear apocalypse in motion. Nuclear warheads have been urgently delivered to the border. Lukashenko has become Putin's nuclear hostage. Putin's generals are already deploying tactical strike maps, and targeting systems are aimed at key cities in Europe. How can NATO respond? Watch. The worse things get for the bunker dwarf, the more hysteria and activity there is around the nuclear triad. The Russian Ministry of Defense has released footage of training exercises by military units and the strategic missile forces of the Northern and Pacific Fleets, long-range aviation, and the Leningrad and Central military districts.
Prepare the submarine for sailing at periscope depth. Maintain a course of 6 degrees with a 2-degree stern trim to compensate for sea conditions. Sea state, 2 points.
This is just a show costing millions of rubles. The Kremlin started this to convince everyone the Russian army is ready to launch missiles. The Russian Ministry of Defense posted a video from Belarus showing nuclear exercises. In the Republic, where, according to Lukashenko, Putin's notorious nut has long been stored, nuclear warheads were brought to field training sites for exercises. The video shows soldiers bustling around vehicles in an unknown forest. Sometimes during the day, sometimes at night, under flashes of lightning, and again, right in broad daylight.
But overall, what is the nuclear potential in Belarus? Let's try to figure it out. We still don't know the exact answer. Lukashenko claims that tactical nuclear weapons are located on the territory of Belarus. But at the very least, there was information that 10 Su-30 SMs, capable of carrying nuclear warheads, arrived in Belarus. Belarus also has its own Su-25s. However, the number is not disclosed. Maybe someone has seen it in some sources. They underwent technical modernization at Russian factories. And there is also the Su-24M, which is also capable of carrying nuclear warheads. And there are also Iskanders stationed right there, which can also launch, pardon the expression, tactical nuclear warheads. So Lukashenko dreamed and dreamed, ever since 1994, of bringing nuclear weapons back to Belarusian territory. Why did he want this? He really wanted to join the exclusive and prestigious club of the most elite members. The cool guys.
But the potato Führer miscalculated. His friends in the Kremlin can supply him with part of the nuclear triad, but they'll keep the control button for themselves.
Control over nuclear weapons, if again they are located on Belarusian territory, is exercised by the Kremlin, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, and the relevant military units of the armed forces. That's why the decision, the button, is in the hands of Putin, not Lukashenko. What does this lead to? Right now, these exercises are taking place on the territory of Belarus. Every single person has been put on combat readiness. And we must fully understand that the states of Western Europe, the NATO countries, have now aimed their weapons at the territory of Belarus. They've taken aim and are watching very closely through the sights. So what's going to happen? They won't be indifferent to this. Or maybe this isn't just an exercise, or maybe something else. Maybe Putin and Lukashenko have something planned. Or maybe they really won't just be conducting drills, but will actually use nuclear weapons. Or maybe it will be a mistake. And that's why now all the sights are set on Belarus, and they're nuclear too. And that means there's a target on the heads of Belarusians.
Representatives of the Belarusian opposition and analysts believe that these exercises are just a show. Something is going to fly somewhere as if it's about to be launched, with Lukashenko nodding approvingly.
Lukashenko and his generals are gazing thoughtfully into the distance. Something is happening. Something is stirring in the field. Then, maybe, there will be a big boom, something like that. And then a formal report saying, that's it, we've successfully achieved our main goals, we have the very best army in the world. Well, okay, the second best, after the Russian army. What's a bit concerning is the scale of these exercises, to begin with, and secondly, it is important to note that there have never been joint nuclear exercises between Russia and Belarus before. That is to say, Russia has conducted such exercises periodically throughout its history, even if they were on a smaller scale. But Belarus, as a matter of historical record, has never been involved in them at any point. And for me, this also means
this represents yet another small step towards the loss of sovereignty. Belarus is steadily moving towards being included in this joint, I do not know, defensive-offensive military district with Russia. Maybe we can put it that way, right? That is to say, even if we do not have our own nuclear weapons, we are actively participating in this process. We find ourselves participating in these military exercises, and they are basically using us, Belarusians and the territory of Belarus as a staging ground. The authoritarian regime of Alexander Lukashenko, that is, he is also being used by the Kremlin. This once again clearly demonstrates just how lacking in any real independence the Belarusian state is today. In
recent times, the hysteria around a potential war in Belarus has reached a fever pitch. He openly tells Belarusians to prepare and never takes off his military uniform. The forests along the borders with Ukraine and NATO countries have been closed to visitors, even local residents, under the pretext of fire safety concerns.
I'm afraid, and most likely this is how it will be, that Russia will use Lukashenko as its own pet madman, as a sort of a torn-off gun. In roughly the same way, China uses the DPRK, that is North Korea, when a country, China, says, yes, we are normal, but North Korea psychopaths, they can, in my opinion, go and launch a nuclear missile. So it's better if you listen. That is, it's better if you do what we require of you, what we ask, because in that case we can keep North Korea in check from any kind of reckless actions. And so I think that Russia will use Lukashenko in much the same way.
Analysts do not rule out that Putin might dare to strike one of the NATO countries. This decision is currently aided by Europe's weakness and the indifference of the United States. And the window of opportunity for an attack is not that large. To help, the bunker man can once again threaten with nuclear weapons on the territory of Belarus. By the way, according to analysts, Russia always conducts large-scale nuclear exercises in October. And the only time the schedule was changed was in February 2022. The Kremlin checked its nuclear stockpiles before invading Ukraine.
Frontline extravaganza. Syrski struck Gerasimov near Kupiansk. Legendary occupying unit Visuster. Ashes. Moscow mourns. A one-way trip for Russians. Kharkiv region has become a zone of total death for them. The trap for the occupiers has snapped shut for good. Details in the report.
Putin's occupiers have been driven out. Ukrainian forces control Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. According to the military, there are no Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups in Kupiansk itself. Those occupiers who were previously trapped in the city have already been eliminated or captured. At the same time, some individual Russian soldiers are still trying to infiltrate the city, but they quickly become targets for the Ukrainian armed forces.
Until recently, the district hospital area was an organized center of resistance for the Russian occupiers. But at this moment, both the hospital itself and the surrounding area are under the control of the Ukrainian defense forces.
Currently, the main role in the enemy's combat operations is played by infantry and FPV drones, and most of the Russian soldiers in this sector of the front are former convicts.
In addition, it should be noted that there is a maximum concentration in this direction of the so-called Storm Z and Storm V units. The corps is made up of former inmates from Russian prisons. It is no coincidence that the highest concentration of these units is found precisely in command positions. The Storm Z and Storm V units are specifically utilized as disposable assault troops, with the complete and explicit understanding that urban combat is exceptionally intense and dangerous, and as a direct consequence of this, the mortality rate among members of these assault groups frequently reaches up to 80%.
It is precisely with convicts that Putin is trying to patch up the gaps in his personnel and compensate for the enormous losses without an official mobilization. In
Russian prisons, according to data from the Russian Federal Penitentiary Service, there are up to 500,000 inmates. Therefore, this is a highly substantial human resource for the ongoing replenishment of the ranks of the occupying forces. Moreover, we are talking about the forced nature of signing contracts with the country's Ministry of Defense.
But no matter how much cannon fodder Putin sends, there is only one thing waiting for them here, a real death conveyor belt. The occupiers are being thrown into attacks en masse, where most of them are eliminated even before reaching the Ukrainian positions.
According to information from the Russian side itself, in the Kupiansk direction, the mortality rate among personnel ranges from 75 to 80%. It should be noted that it is precisely in the Kupiansk direction, due to the catastrophic losses of the occupying forces, that the Russian military command is forced to act. They had to make unpopular and difficult personnel decisions. That is the immediate dismissal of those responsible for the failure and the offensive, as well as for the catastrophic and devastating losses of personnel and heavy armored vehicles.
The Ukrainian military confidently holds the city, and several factors work in their favor. challenging hills, the Oskol River as a natural barrier, and of course the high skill of the Ukrainian armed forces.
The armed forces of the Ukrainian defense are actively carrying out successful counteroffensive operations in this direction, not only in the area of Kupiansk and Kupiansk-Uzlovy, but also accordingly in the Kharkiv direction. As of the current reports today, it is known about the highly successful and strategic actions of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, namely the liberation and establishing full operational control of the settlements of Vilcha and Sehelnya. This is the Vovchansk direction. These are significant tactical successes of our defenders, which effectively prevent and hinder the occupiers from implementing the idea of a so-called buffer zone.
Let us recall that the Russian dictator has repeatedly claimed that Kupiansk is under the control of Russian forces. Such statements in particular have been made during press conferences and meetings with the military leadership. Putin is simply passing off his wishes as reality in order to reassure Russia's domestic audience and conceal failures at the front. All such statements from the Kremlin are completely shattered by reality.
That's all for now. And for more fighting news from the front, tune in to our next episode.